Robert Harrison stood in the doorway of the hotel suite, loosening his tie after another exhausting business meeting. The afternoon light filtered through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the elegant room. He was a successful man by anyone's measure. Sharp suits, confident posture, the kind of presence that commanded respect in boardrooms. But as he looked at the scene before him, his shoulders sagged with a familiar weight. There, on the king-sized bed, lay his wife Margaret and their 7-year-old twins, Sophie and Daniel. All three were fast asleep, nestled together under a cream-colored throw blanket. Margaret's dark, curly hair spread across the pillow, one protective arm around each child. The twins, mirror images with their mother's warm complexion and gentle features, slept peacefully in their light blue pajamas. Robert's chest tightened. This was the 17th nanny in 6 months. 17 women who'd promised they could handle the twins, who'd assured him they had experience with difficult children. Each one had left within 2 days, citing everything from disrespect to impossible demands to outright chaos. But Robert knew the truth. Sophie and Daniel weren't bad children. They were heartbroken children. 2 years ago, Margaret had been diagnosed with a progressive neurological condition. Some days were good. She could laugh and play and be the mother she'd always been. Other days, she was too weak to leave bed, her words slurred, her hands trembling. The twins had watched their vibrant, energetic mother slowly fade, and it terrified them. They tested every nanny the same way, with impossible questions, deliberate misbehavior, and tears that came from a place too deep for words. They were searching for someone who wouldn't leave, someone who wouldn't give up when things got hard. Just like they needed their mother not to leave them. Robert walked quietly to the bed and pulled the blanket higher over his sleeping family. Margaret stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering open. "You're home," she whispered, her voice thick with exhaustion. "I'm home," he said softly, kissing her forehead. What was her name?" "Jennifer." Margaret's expression said everything. "She left around noon. Said the children were unmanageable." Robert closed his eyes and took a slow breath. He'd taken time off work repeatedly. He'd rearranged his entire life. But his company needed him. And Margaret needed medical care that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. He had to keep working, which meant he had to find someone who could help. "I'll call the agency again tomorrow," he said quietly. Margaret squeezed his hand weakly. Maybe we need to try something different." 3 days later, a woman named Eleanor Winters arrived at their brownstone in Boston's Back Bay neighborhood. She was in her early 60s, with silver hair pulled back in a simple bun and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She wore a cardigan over a floral dress and carried a well-worn canvas bag. There was something about her, a calm steadiness, that made Robert pause in the doorway. "Mr. Harrison?" She extended her hand. Her grip was firm but gentle. "I'm Eleanor. The agency sent me." Robert had stopped being hopeful. "Did they tell you about the twins?" "They told me your family is going through a difficult time," Eleanor said simply. "They told me you need someone patient, someone who understands that children act out when they're scared." Something in Robert's expression must have shifted, because Eleanor smiled gently. "I lost my husband 5 years ago. Watched him struggle with Parkinson's for 3 years before that. My daughter and grandson lived with us then. I know what it looks like when a family is trying to hold together while grief is already pulling at the seams." Robert felt his throat tighten. He stepped aside and let her in. The twins were waiting in the living room, arms crossed, matching expressions of defiance on their faces. They'd perfected this routine. Eleanor set down her bag and looked at them both for a long moment. She didn't smile too brightly or speak in that false, cheerful voice so many nannies used. She simply sat down on the ottoman across from them and folded her hands in her lap. "I'm Eleanor," she said. "I'm not here to replace your mother or to pretend everything is fine when it isn't. I'm here to help take care of some things so your dad can work and your mom can rest. That's all." Sophie, the bolder of the twins, spoke first. "Our mom is sick. The other nannies always pretended she wasn't. That must have been frustrating," Eleanor said quietly. "When people pretend, it makes you feel like you can't talk about what's real." Daniel, usually quieter, looked up. "Are you going to leave too?" Eleanor met his eyes steadily. I'm going to stay as long as your family needs me and wants me here. But Daniel, I can't promise that hard things won't happen. None of us can. What I can promise is that I won't leave just because things are difficult. The twins exchanged a glance. It wasn't hope yet, but it was something. That first day, Eleanor didn't try to impose rules or schedules. She asked Margaret what would be most helpful, then quietly went about making lunch, tidying up, and creating a sense of calm order in the house. When Sophie deliberately spilled juice on the kitchen floor to test her, Eleanor simply handed her a towel. Accidents happen. Let's clean it up together. When Daniel screamed that he hated her and wanted her to leave, Eleanor sat down beside him on the stairs and said, I hear you. You're angry and scared, and you don't know if you can trust me yet. That makes sense. She didn't try to fix their feelings. She just acknowledged them. By evening, something had shifted. The twins were quieter, watchful. Margaret, who'd observed from the couch, had tears in her eyes. She's different, Margaret whispered to Robert that night. She sees them. Really sees them. Days turned into weeks. Eleanor showed up every morning at 8 and stayed until 6, creating routines that felt safe rather than restrictive. She made their favorite meals, helped with homework, read stories. But more than that, she listened. She listened when Sophie cried because she was afraid. Her mother wouldn't be at her next school concert. She listened when Daniel confessed he sometimes pretended to be sick, so he could stay home and make sure his mother was okay. And slowly, impossibly, the twins began to trust her. One afternoon, Eleanor found Margaret struggling to walk from the bedroom to the living room. Without fuss, Eleanor offered her arm and helped her to the couch, then sat beside her. Some days are harder than others, Margaret said, voice breaking. They are, Eleanor agreed. And you don't have to be strong every moment. That's what we're here for. To hold things steady when you need to rest. Margaret looked at this woman who'd come into their lives just weeks ago. Why are you really here, Eleanor? The agency said you'd retired. Eleanor was quiet for a moment, looking out the window where the twins were playing in the small garden. After my husband died, I felt lost. My daughter suggested I volunteer, stay busy. But busy wasn't what I needed. I needed to matter again, to help in a way that was real. She turned to Margaret. Your family needed someone who understood that love means staying through the hard parts. I needed to remember that I still had something to give. Margaret reached for Eleanor's hand and held it tight. 3 months after Eleanor arrived, Margaret had a particularly bad episode. She collapsed in the hallway and the ambulance had to be called. Robert rushed home from work to find the twins terrified, holding on to Eleanor in the living room. Mom's going to die, Sophie sobbed. She's going to die and leave us. Eleanor held them both close. Your mother is very sick, sweetheart. I won't lie to you about that. But right now the doctors are helping her. And whatever happens, you won't go through it alone. Your dad loves you. I'm here. And your mom. She loves you more than anything in this world. When Robert returned from the hospital that night, exhausted and hollow-eyed, he found Eleanor still there. The twins were asleep on the couch, and she'd made coffee. You didn't have to stay, he said, his voice rough. Yes, I did, Eleanor said gently. Robert, you can't do this alone. None of you can. He sank into the chair across from her and, for the first time in 2 years, let himself cry. Not the silent tears he shed in private, but the deep, wrenching sobs of a man watching his wife fade away and feeling powerless to stop it. Eleanor didn't speak. She just sat with him in that pain, bearing witness. Margaret came home 2 days later, weaker but stable. The twins climbed carefully onto the bed beside her, and this time they weren't afraid to talk about their fears. I'm scared, Mom, Daniel whispered. I'm scared too, Margaret admitted. But we're together, and that matters. Eleanor stood in the doorway, watching this family that had let her in. She thought about her late husband, about the helpers who'd made those final years bearable, about how the greatest gift we can give each other is simply showing up, again and again, especially when it's hard. Robert found her there and placed a hand on her shoulder. Thank you, he said quietly, for staying, for seeing my children, seeing all of us, for who we really are. Eleanor smiled, her eyes bright with tears. Thank you for letting me. You gave me something too, you know. Purpose, family, a place where I matter. Eleanor stayed with the Harrison family for 2 more years, through Margaret's good days and her declining ones, through the twins' tears and triumphs. She was there the morning Margaret passed peacefully in her sleep, holding Robert's hand. She was there as the family grieved together, no longer afraid to feel their pain. And she was there, months later, when the twins learned to laugh again, when the house slowly filled with warmth and memories instead of just sorrow. Some people come into our lives and change everything, not because they're perfect, but because they choose to stay when staying is hard, because they see us, truly see us, and decide we're worth the effort. Eleanor Winters was that person for the Harrison family, and in return they reminded her that it's never too late to matter, to love, to make a difference in this world. Sometimes the impossible is just kindness, offered consistently one day at a time.